Brian Cannon joining us. Brian Cannon, tell you what he's doing. He's been fighting a redistricting battle in Virginia for, Brian, how long? Years, right?
It's been 4 years now, yeah.
4 years. And see, when the Republicans had the majority by 67, it was like, yeah, redistricting, call me later. I'm just being honest with you. It was like, yeah, I don't want to redistrict. Like, we got a supermajority. And remember, like, it was a few years ago, Bill Howe put like $600,000 into it in Sam Rasul's seat in Roanoke. Remember that?
Oh,
Lost it.
Yeah.
I mean, they had so much money. It was
a different time.
It was a different time, and that he got beat. They had a candidate down there, I think an ex-sheriff or something. She got beat, like Sam got like 70% of the vote, but they put like $500,000 in it. They had a super-duper majority, and now it's all going away. Tell us about your organization, Brian, again, and what exactly it is you're trying to do in the face of this new mapping catastrophe for Republicans.
Yeah, the new maps that just came out from the courts are a disaster, and it's Exhibit A as to why we shouldn't be doing this, and why, if you've been sleeping on redistricting, now's the time to wake up.
Right.
Because it really impacts us. So we're at One Virginia trying to make sure that these districts are drawn that reflect our community, so that people are actually the ones picking their politicians, not politicians or courts getting to pick their people. And that's just kind of a fundamental premise of a representative democracy that we should all be willing to agree on. But we have this history in Virginia and around the country of letting politicians do the drawing, and that's what's gotten us into this mess that we're in now.
Okay, so here's John Fredericks being completely duplicitous. See, Brian, here's a difference with me and the fake newsers. I admit when I'm duplicitous, right? So when the Republicans held a 67-seat majority, I blew you off. I wouldn't even have, I mean, you'd come on once in a while because you're my friend, but I'm like, who needs redistricting? Who needs redistricting? Republicans have 67 seats. Have a nice day. Thanks for coming. But now, when you're faced with political Armageddon, all of a sudden you're my best friend because you're the last hope. You're the last hope.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's fair.
I mean, look, it's just honest. I mean, honesty's the best policy, Brian. Now you're my best friend. We got to get this.
I'll take it, John. I'll take it.
We got to get this done because, look, so redistricting, there was a lawsuit, and the lawsuit was really over. I think it was the 72nd district in Richmond, and it was Eric Holder's firm, and he's got a new firm. They filed a suit, and so it was on the 72nd district that they said was gerrymandered, which is Schuyler.
Schuyler Van Valkenburg. It was actually the one inside. It was the 71st in the Richmond area.
Okay, 71st. That was the one they sued on. Yeah, that was the shining example of gerrymandering. And that's Schuyler, the Democrat. How do I say his last name? I always forget.
Van Valkenburg.
Delegate
Van Valkenburg. It looks like a toilet bowl.
Right.
That's what that district looks like.
Right.
And he'll admit that, too.
Right. So, I mean, it was a crazy district. And they said, okay, here's a perfect example of how it was gerrymandered. So then the legislature couldn't agree. Northam went ahead and appointed a judge panel. They went to a college professor in Irvine, California, 3,700 miles away. How that makes sense, I have no idea. So this college professor comes back with a map that has basically ensured a Republican minority. And there's like 5 or 6 seats that the Republicans have now that they turned blue. They destroyed the seat for Kirk Cox. He's the speaker. And then for Chris Jones, the chairman of appropriations. Both of them are now at risk not to even get reelected. And it just so happens that both of them are the biggest fundraisers for the Republican Party. I mean, this is no coincidence. This is a happenstance. So this is a terrible map that they've done. And now we're kind of stuck with it. And it's a complete disaster for Republicans. Not fair. So what is your organization, Brian Cannon, the executive director of One Virginia? Walk us through what your proposal is and how you get a better, fairer deal.
You got to have 3 things in this. We got to have a level playing field. Like, look, we've had it where in 2011, Democrats controlled the Senate and they rigged it for themselves, and Republicans controlled the House and they did the same. So we got to have a system where just the districts are neutral, and that'll get us more competition, but it'll also get us districts that don't, look like a toilet bowl district shape or something crazy. We need three things to do that. You got to have transparency in the process. Sunshine does a good deal on those backroom deals. You got to have somebody else drawing the maps besides the guys running in them, right? So an independent commission, a quasi-independent commission made up of half citizens, half legislators, whatever it is. There's 100 ways to do it. And then the last thing is you got to have good, clear rules. I mean, I hear all the time on social media people like, let's just use zip codes or let's just use roads and local boundaries. All of that, yeah, exactly. We should use pre-existing lines so we don't have these crazy old districts where they only make sense for someone's reelection strategy. So you got to have clear rules. You got to prohibit gerrymandering. You got to make it illegal for them to draw a district to favor one party or individual. That's not what this should be about.
So I agree with that. So we went to this, we left it in the hands of the courts. And I'm thinking, okay, well, the judges are going to draw a fair map. They turn it over to this guy in California, this college professor, and the map is completely asinine because it obviously favors Democrats to a huge degree. I mean, it's worse than the one they had. How do you now? What is the next step now to get a fairer system?
Well, here's to underscore your point, John. The Democratic House proposed a map, as well as did the Republicans before the court did. They both proposed a map. Neither one of those maps were as aggressive as the map that actually the guy from California did. I mean, this is just why we don't want this process happening like this. So what's going to happen is I think these maps are going to stick, and I think that's the kind of scary part to it. The Supreme Court is going to hear this case in March. There's an appeal. But the Supreme Court has already ruled unanimously in March of 2017 that the districts were racial gerrymander. And Justice Thomas, who's no fan of the Voting Rights Act or any of those kind of things where politicians play shenanigans with it, Justice Thomas wrote a scathing opinion calling out the process for 2011. And there's a lot of things to be said about Justice Thomas, but one of them is not that he changes his mind. So I don't think as long as Justice Thomas stays firm on this, and I expect him to, there's going to be any relief at the U.S. Supreme Court on this issue, which means these maps are going to stick.
So they'll be the maps that the House of Delegates will use. They don't affect the state Senate right now. These will be the maps that the House of Delegates will use going into 2019, going into the June primaries and the 2019 general election, right?
That's it. Yep. And the people we elect in this November 2019 will be the people in place for redistricting in 2021. So if we don't take this at least partially out of the hands of the legislature and add some transparency and some anti-gerrymandering language, if we don't do this, the people we elect in November will be the people able to gerrymander Virginia in 2021.
All right. So how does your One Virginia process work? I know it's got to pass the House and Senate 2 times to get on the ballot for a referendum, so we change the system once and for all. So go ahead and just walk us through what has to happen to get your proposal as a referendum amendment on the Virginia ballot.
Yeah, so if we were in California, I think, John, you and I and a couple other people could sign the back of an envelope or a napkin and amend their constitution. It's pretty easy to do there. In Virginia, we take things a little slowly, a little more small C conservative, and it takes us a while. So we've got to pass it this year before the election. There could be a special session or something like that. We've got to pass it this year. Then we got to pass it again next year, and then it goes on the ballot for Virginians to vote on in November of 2020, which should be a big year anyway. But we're not worried about Virginia. I mean, 78% of Virginians support this, 73% of Republicans, 88% of Democrats. And the numbers are great on when you ask just the average person about this issue. It's just getting it past the legislature twice in a good form that we can support. So right now there's a bill in the Senate and there's a bill in the House, and we're working to make both of those bills better by adding in transparency and anti-gerrymandering language to them.
Does either bill have a Democrat co-sponsor?
The one in the Senate does. The one in the House does not.
Who's the Democratic co-sponsor in the Senate?
The Democratic co-sponsor in the Senate is Barker and Saslaw.
Okay, Barker and Saslaw. So let me ask you this. So you're likely to get it through this year, right? Especially in the Senate with Barker and Saslaw. And the House has got a one-seat majority, and there's no Republican in the House that's going to vote against this because they're doomed without it, right? I mean, the way this new map has come down is there's 5 seats there they're going to lose. And, maybe 3, maybe they hold 2 of them, but 5 of them are at risk, and maybe they'll gain 1. But the odds of them now keeping the House of Delegates based on this new map have really narrowed. I mean, it's going to take an amazing feat for them to hang on by 1. The David Yancey seat gone, mail it in. Maybe the Republicans pick up Mike Mullen on the peninsula, but then there's 4 or 5 others that are just gone. There's other Democrat seats that they picked up in 2017 that became stronger Democratic. So you're going to get it through, all right? 2019, I believe. Now you go to 2020, you got to get it through again. Senate has taken control of the Democrats take control of the Senate. That's probably at an 85% chance right now. Probably Barker and Saslaw, though, we're not going to back off on it. Maybe they will, but the House is going to have a 5, 6, 7, 8 seat Democratic majority. They're not going to want to change it, so it's dead. So how do you put the pressure on the Democrats in 2020 to get the step B to put on the ballot?
So it's a little harder for Democrats because when they were in the minority, when the Republicans had that 66, 67 seat majority, Democrats talked a really good game about redistricting reform. All of a sudden, they wanted everything fair. And you're right. As they get closer to being in charge, they start getting really picky. So whether they would have accepted like a B or a B plus plan a couple of years ago, now they want the A plus or nothing. We are definitely hearing that even this year. Mm-hmm. Right now, what's going to keep them in check is primaries. They've got primaries up in June, and their primary opponents are hitting them on this. We've got folks running in primaries in the Fredericksburg region who are Republicans, conservative Republicans, hitting their incumbent legislators on this. So it's coming from both sides. But the primary challenges are real, and I think that helps right now. But once they get past that and they're in charge, then it's going to be on us and the about 100,000 supporters we have all across the state to really fight like heck to get this thing through. The good news is that the table will be set, right? So whatever they pass this year, that's it. There's no amending it. You either junk the whole thing or you pass it the second time and let the voters of Virginia decide. And I think we've got the firepower to get that through with the help of your listeners and other folks chiming in. And just, the only reason they've been able to get away with this for so long is because they didn't think you cared. They didn't know you knew how sneaky these map drawing things were. But all these court cases and everything, that shows people. That pulls back the curtain.
I tell you what, Brian Cannon, you've got to get this done this year. It's the right thing to do. I'm 100% in favor of it. Let's make it fair. Let's make it transparent. I mean, the way it is right now, either this map drawn by this professor in Irvine, California is egregious. I mean, I looked at it again this weekend. I really couldn't believe it. It was like I was reading it in The Onion. I mean, it's just a travesty. How do we get behind this? What do we do?
Go ahead, John.
What do we do?
So call your legislator right now, whoever you got or whoever you got a relationship with them, and tell them that you need transparency and anti-gerrymandering language in any redistricting bill. The one in the Senate is SJ 306. The one in the House is HJ 615. But that's the base of it. If you basically need you basically need to just call them and tell them transparency and anti-gerrymandering language have got to be in there. Otherwise, we're not really cooking with gas here. If you want to find out more, you can go to onevirginia2021.org. That's one in Virginia spelled out the long way, 2021 like the year, 2021.org. And you can /amendment, because we're talking about a constitutional amendment here. And that has all the latest details of what's going on, as well as a button where you could take action and you can do exactly what I said to tell your delegate and senator about transparency and clear rules that stop gerrymandering.
onevirginia2021.org.